In a lot of applications, there are times that we need to get information about the currently logged in user. So in this lecture, we're going to add a new API endpoint for getting the current user. So let's go to our users module. Currently, we only have one route handler here. That's for creating a new user. Now we need to add another handler for get methods. Now here as the path or route, we can pass a parameter, but this means the client should send the ID to the server. While this approach is perfectly fine, there are times that perhaps for security reasons, you don't want to have an endpoint like this, because then I can send the ID of another user and look at their account where there might be some information that perhaps should not be visible to me. So the approach that we use quite often to get information about the current user is to have an API endpoint like me. With this, the client is not going to send the user ID. We get it from the JSON Web Token. So I cannot forge someone else's JSON Web Token because I told you that in order to do so, I need to create a new digital signature for that JSON Web Token. Now let's add the route handler. Async, request, and response goes to this code block. Now, this API endpoint should only be available to authenticated users. So here we need to add our auth middleware. On the top, let's load auth from middleware/auth. And just to clarify, here auth represents authorization, not authentication, because authentication is about validating the username password. Here we want to see if the user has permission to access a resource or not, and that is authorization. So we add our middleware here. Now with this middleware, if the client doesn't send a valid JSON Web Token, we will never get to this route handler, okay? However, if we get here, as you saw in the implementation of this middleware function, here we will have request.userObject. So we can access the ID property here. So instead of passing the ID property in the path or in the route, we get it from request.user.id, which actually comes from our JSON Web Token. So this is a more secure approach. Now we want to find a user by the given ID. So we call user.findById. We pass this value, then await the promise and get the user object here. Now, we don't want to return the user's password to the client. So here, let's call select and exclude the password property. In your application, maybe you want to exclude other properties as well. Maybe credit card number, maybe address. So here we have a user object. Finally, we send this to the client. So send user. As simple as that. Now let's test this. So here in Postman, I'm going to add a new tab, send a GET request to localhost port 3000 API users me. Now initially, I don't want to send a JSON Web Token. So test, access denied, no token provided. Beautiful. Now let's go to the headers tab, add X auth token here, and then pass a valid JSON Web Token. Send. This is my user account. You can see password is excluded.